For centuries, humans have peered into the cosmos, wondering if we were truly alone. We have conjured up civilizations light years away, sent out radio pulses into the shadows, and studied anomalies in the hope of finding one indisputable sign. Now, we may have received it. What began as a routine observation of an obscure interstellar object 3 Atlas has turned into what may be the most chilling astronomical discovery in human history. It wasn't the object's origin that astonished scientists. It wasn't its trajectory, its brightness, or even its bizarre silence. It was the result of what was inside it. The James Webb Space Telescope, orbiting silently 1,000,000 miles from Earth, picked up something that shattered every expectation. Not a rock, not a relic, not a comet, but something that behaved as though it were alive. As astronomers dug deeper, what they uncovered forced them to abandon everything they thought they knew about space, life, and our place in the universe. Because 3 Atlas might not just be passing through our solar system, it might be studying us. And more terrifyingly, it might be reacting to us. From the moment Atlas was spotted near the edge of the solar system, something about it disturbed astronomers. Its brightness was unnatural, far too intense for an object its size. Normally, comets brighten because of outgassing, frozen materials vaporizing as they approach the sun, glowing streams of dust and gas trailing behind. Atlas, though, was different. It glowed with a sharp, clean precision to constant to stable, as if the light wasn't reflected at all but generated. That attracted the attention of NASA and ESA almost immediately. Telescopes from Chile to Hawaii began tracking it. Yet it was James Webb that was tasked with answering the deeper questions. Webb, with its unprecedented infrared sensitivity, wasn't just looking for light, it was mapping and measuring heat, the object's thermal fingerprint. And the results were shocking. Atlas wasn't just warm from solar radiation. It was emitting heat from deep within, focused at its center and radiating outward in pulsating waves. This kind of internal heat suggested something far beyond geology. The pulses were rhythmic, irregular enough to seem natural, yet structured enough to imply design. It was as if the object was living. Not in a biological sense, perhaps, but certainly in one that was energetic or mechanical. From then on, the scientific community stopped referring to 3 Atlas as a comet. Behind closed doors, some began calling it the Visitor. As Webb continued its scans, other instruments joined in. Radio telescopes began detecting an odd electromagnetic haze surrounding the object. At first, it was dismissed as background noise static, the kind of interference every deep space observer has seen 1,000 times. However, something in that static stood out. Fourier transforms, run by Harvard and MIT teams, revealed mathematical breakdowns that identified patterns in the chaos. Buried within the noise, they found it, a repeating signal, not the regular thump of a pulsar or the decaying hum of radiation. This was something else. The pulses were spaced at almost perfect intervals, but with just enough variation to mimic language, or at least intent. It was subtle, so subtle it could have gone unnoticed. But the more they studied it, the clearer it became. This was not an accidental emission. It wasn't something Atlas was simply leaking into the void. It was broadcasting. And worse still, it may have been listening. The narrow band it used matched frequencies close to our own communication and guidance mechanisms. The signal shifted slightly when the solar wind increased or when observatories coordinated their efforts across the globe. It was behaving as if it were aware of its surroundings, adapting in real time. That's when whispers began to circulate. This wasn't a natural object. It was responding. Then came the flare. For weeks, the object remained relatively stable, drifting through space with its pulsing heat and silent signal. Until one day, without warning, Atlas erupted. In less than a few minutes, its brightness surged by 40%. A sudden, violent outburst unlike anything ever observed in human history. But it wasn't chaotic. It was flawless, symmetrical, almost surgical. At the same time, Webb noticed a spike, a heat bloom in thermal energy that radiated outward, then stabilized as though something inside the object had been switched on. Scientists were stunned. This wasn't ice sublimating. This wasn't pressure building from trapped gases. This was something else. This was a system activation. It was the difference between a campfire catching wind and a person turning on a light switch. And the timing was chilling. The flare occurred as Atlas passed a specific point in the solar system, a region near Earth's orbital plane. It was as if it had crossed a line and reacted. Immediately after the flare, it had a new thermal signature permanently. It wasn't the same object anymore. Something inside had awakened. Astronomers also noticed something else a few days later. Atlas had altered its course. Objects in space don't simply alter their direction. Comets don't steer. They obey the laws of gravity, of radiation pressure, of momentum. But Atlas was now veering off course from its predicted trajectory, not wildly, but with measured precision. At first, it was a few arcseconds of drift here and there. But over the next few days, the deviation became undeniable. It was as if the object had corrected its path and not just randomly. Its new course brought it closer to Earth's orbital neighborhood. Not a direct collision, nothing that would trigger planetary defense protocols, but close enough to be observed. Close enough to raise alarms? Analysts pored over the data. Maybe it was a gas jet, they suggested. It could have been a mistake. But nothing matched. The direction of travel changed hours after the flare. To exact, it was as though the flare and the course correction were connected, as if one had triggered the other. And then came the most unnerving possibility of all, that whatever was inside Atlas saw us, analyzed us, and adjusted its position in response. That we were no longer looking at an object but a system, a construct. Something that wasn't just passing through, but performing a mission. After the trajectory shift, a new anomaly emerged. James Webb spectrometric data revealed oscillations, but not in temperature or light. These were reversals in the strength of the electromagnetic field and rhythmic fluctuations emanating from the object's core, something scientists had only seen once before in biological systems. Dr. Leona Koresh, a biophysicist who had been brought in as a consultant, immediately recognized the pattern. The frequency of the fluctuations mimicked that of cellular respiration, specifically the cycle of oxygen in microbial life. Of course, no one was implying that Atlas possessed lungs. But the fact remained, the object was cycling energy with the timing, regularity, and efficiency of something living, or worse, something made to look like life. When supercooled plasma simulations were run to test alternative explanations, none reproduced the waveform. The conclusion was as surreal as it was simple. This pattern could only emerge from an adaptive, energy-regulating system. Whether artificial or organic, it was no comet. And then, as if aware it had been seen, Atlas went silent. Its pulses, radio, infrared, thermal flatlined. The electromagnetic oscillations disappeared. Webb couldn't detect a single fluctuation. Earth-based telescopes lost lock on its light signature. It appeared as though the object had simply powered down or cloaked itself. For 6 hours, the world's most advanced observatory stared into space and saw nothing where Atlas should have been. Not darkness, not shadow, void. That silence hit differently. It wasn't passive, it was intentional. Scientists described it as perfect, as if the object had answered their inquiry with detachment. It was no longer sending signals, it was hiding. And then, as suddenly as it vanished, it emerged brighter than ever. The heat signature grew quickly. But this time, there was something new embedded in the signal, a pattern. A modulation so complex it took days to decode. And when they did, it left everyone shaken. It was a mirror of one of our earliest Earth-based satellite broadcasts, an old analog telemetry stream from 1983. Somehow, Atlas had captured it, stored it, and was now repeating it back. But why? Around the same time, James Webb achieved the most precise representation of the dust trail surrounding Atlas. And what it revealed obliterated every last assumption. Within the debris was not random rock and ice. Instead, Webb detected fragments of structured molecular alloys including a composition of nickel, vanadium, and a lattice of rare earth elements that simply do not occur naturally. Not only were these metals ultra-pure, but their arrangement was planned. Dr. Raphael Song, a materials engineer, ran the molecular maps through known human databases. The configuration was similar to the experimental materials being studied in advanced AI circuitry. The fragments weren't chaotic leftovers from space formation, they were scrapped components, parts, evidence of wear, of maintenance. It wasn't a comet. It wasn't even a ship in the conventional sense. It was a device shedding its skin as it moved. And each discarded piece told the same story. Atlas was alive, but it was also breaking down. And that begged the most disturbing question of all: what happens when it finally stops? The final act followed. The moment when scientists stopped debating and started panicking. Days after Atlas resumed its signals, ground-based observatories picked up an atmospheric anomaly on the moon, a thin layer of ionized particles never seen before. However,